Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Today I'm bringing you a week 23 wrap up, which I didn't know if I was going to get a film at the normal time, which I am, because I went on a surprise trip to Montana this week. Here's a picture of me and my dad. He called me on Wednesday and asked if I wanted to go on a hauling trip with him to Montana. He does small hotshot loads, which I'm not going to go into what that terminology means if you don't know, but he has a truck and a trailer, and he's not exactly a truck driver, but he also kind of is at the same time. It's strange, but he called and asked if I wanted to keep him company, and I said, well, I think that I can. He's like, oh, you don't have to. And I was like, okay, you asked me. I think that I want to go. Let's make it happen. So I did, and I ended up still getting quite a bit of reading done in the truck, which I know not everyone can read in a vehicle. I am one of the blessed people who I don't get sick when I read. I don't get a headache or anything. And so I actually got through like 4 books while we were on our trip, which was good because I would have been behind if I hadn't been able to finish anything. But before we dive into the 11 books that I got through this week, well, one of them's a DNF, which we'll talk about in just a second. So technically I got through 10, but I was surprised and proud of myself because I do have some trips coming up still the rest of the month. So that's why I was also hesitant to go because next weekend I'm going on we're going to an amusement park with my friends. And then the next week I am going on a surprise trip, which I will be gone for like 4 days. So I was like, is this a smart idea to do? But I'm glad that I did. So before we dive into the books, I just want to welcome Hannah King to the channel memberships. Thank you so much, Hannah, for choosing to support me that way. If you guys haven't heard me talk about it at any point, this channel is completely fan funded. I am a full-time booktuber and content creator, which is why I was able to just up and go on a trip to Montana with my dad, which was amazing. Like, these are times that you can't get back, and you know, to be able to do something like that is just so special because I don't have anything stopping me. In fact, I'm encouraged to do these things because of my supporters who helped me to do that. So it was amazing. So anyway, thank you so much, Hannah. Hannah joined at the Romantic Renegade level, which means she gets early access to all of my videos that I put up, as well as gets to help vote on certain topics that I will talk about. So that's awesome. All right, let's get into the books. And we are going to start with the DNF that I had, which I won't talk about too much, but I did read / listen to 50% of A Crown of Ivy and Glass by Claire Legrand. I received both an ALC, which is an advanced listening copy, and an ARC, an advanced reading copy from NetGalley for this book. And I'd been trying to read it basically for a month. I had started reading the ARC before I got the ALC, and I just could not connect with this book. So there was a lot of things that had me excited for it, including that the heroine had a chronic illness, which also was partially about like being like allergic to magic and being in a world of magic and being a part of this royal line who's supposed to be very in control of their powers, and to have her be like allergic to magic and be very like hurt by it, and to be in constant pain just being around her family when they have magic and use magic was such an interesting concept. But things just got very complicated very fast. And again, I don't want to go into everything about this one because since I DNF'd it, I don't want to like form all my opinions off of it. But this book was 460 pages and I read 50% of it, which means I read 280 pages of this book. And I just was not feeling connected with the heroine. I thought she was interesting, but also I just couldn't connect with her, even though it was a first-person point of view book. Her love interest, again, I thought he was intriguing, but I just wasn't getting enough from him. And then there was also the heroine getting horny for him at random times, which sometime I'm okay with, y'all. Sometime I am okay with. All right, in Fourth Wing, does the heroine get horny at random times for Xaden? Yes, she does. But that one worked for me. I don't know why, okay? It's a matter of opinion. And so I just decided to bow out of that book and then not rate it, because if I DNF a book, I don't give it a rating. I put it on my DNF shelf, and I still wrote a short review for this one since I had 2 NetGalley, ARCs for this basically that I had to provide something for. So I did write kind of a review to put in that I just wasn't working for me. And I know I'm not the only one, because if you look at this book on Goodreads, it has, I think, like a 3.3 or less. And a lot of people received ARCs for this. Like, there's people who are way more devoted to fantasy than even I am who are DNFing this book. This one was already postponed once as well, so I don't know. But it just was a no from me. And I mean, I love that there are more and more adult fantasy romance options, so I'm going to keep giving them a try, because I've definitely had a lot of winners as well. But this one just wasn't jiving for Jen. It just wasn't jiving for me, so we gave it a pass. All right, but next I read an absolutely delightful book. So I did skip a little one here, and I read Forbidden by Carla Sorensen. So after I DNF'd A Crown of Ivy and Glass, which again I'd been working on for a month, I was like, I want to jump into some audiobooks that I really, really love. I was also working on finishing one of my most recent cross-stitch projects, which I could have grabbed, but it's up there, and so I needed a good audiobook. So I listened to Forbidden by Carla Sorensen, which is book 4 in the Ward Sisters series, and it's the last one. And in this one, it is a widowed single father who is a retired fighter, and he has now bought this gym, and at this gym is where Isabel works. She trains and works at this gym, and so she's now his employee because he's bought it. And immediately there's some attraction between them, but he's like, I'm not ready to move on. My wife's only been gone for a year. His wife died of cancer, but he has this amazing, precocious little girl who kind of falls for Isabel right away. And Isabel has a nephew who, of course, is, you know, the Ward brother, like his son with his wife. And so the little girl and this little boy, like, they become really tight. So that kind of brings these two together, her nephew and his daughter. And this one was just everything that I thought it would be. It was so sweet. It was so beautiful. The chemistry between these two built so naturally. Even though this book wasn't super long, it was just done so beautifully. And really, I think that this was an example of a very low steam book. Like, this almost had fade to black scenes. Like, they were like open door, but they were not graphically depicted. And so really, I gave this one 1 star for, not 1 star, blah, 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 1 spice, like 1 chili pepper this one had. It had a 5 star. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare everyone. I gave this book 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. My point was, to me, this is an example of a contemporary romance that did not need to rely on all the, like, you know, sexualizing of the characters to such a degree. And I still felt an intense chemistry and spark and longing between these two. And so when there was basically like one kind of open door sex scene and then some like fade to black scenarios, I still felt extremely satisfied with this story. There was just something so sweet and almost wholesome about it, yet there still was so much spark and chemistry between them that for me, this was, there's only one other Carla Sorensen I've read that had a lower spice rating for me than this one, but it is still, this is my favorite Carla Sorensen that I've read. So this was 5 stars. It's my favorite one by her. I can't wait to continue to read more of her. But honestly, I really hold her up as an example of someone who is able to still write me a beautiful, full, and just like longing and desire and complex feelings about like grief and moving on. And I didn't need there to be like, you know, erotic stuff happening. And of course, you know me, I usually like more spice than not. If this book had, you know, one more spicy open door scene, would I have loved that? Yes, I would have. But for me, this one just goes to show like it did not take away from the passion I felt from these two to not have that. So this was a 5-star read. I highly recommend. And like I said, I did skip the 3rd one because that one is like a surprise / secret baby, I think. And I may go back to it because I enjoy Carla's writing and the audiobooks are really good, so I may go back to it. But I wanted a for sure slam dunk after what I read before, and this one absolutely was that. Then I wanted another slam dunk. No. Also, the audiobook was finally released for some books that I am rereading. And so last month I reread Ensnared. This month I reread Enthralled. Yes, this is my absolutely beautiful Fake Crate editions. Just absolutely gorgeous. This is book 2 in the Spider's Mate series. And yeah, the audiobooks are coming out kind of like 1 a month for these. And so I very much look forward to rereading Bound as well. But yeah, this one is Enthralled. It picks up pretty much exactly where Ensnared ended. And we are now at this point where Ivy and Catan are debating waking up the other humans that are there, because, you know, Ivy had been saved by Catan in the first book, and they know that eventually these humans, their life support is going to stop working and they are going to die here. And, you know, Catan is very anxious. Like, he already has, you know, a time keeping Ivy alive, but she's convinced him that we can teach the humans to survive here too. They will adapt, they will learn just as I am. And, you know, they can make friends with some of the Vricks, like, you know, I am with you. Well, obviously they're more than just friends, but like, there will be people to help them. Like, we can do this. And humans are very resourceful. She's like, they can survive a lot of things, which is true. So we get introduced to a whole new group of humans now. And now these are all people who are on this ship together, but they didn't necessarily know each other at all. There were people who were picked for this mission, but some of them had all very different jobs, so we don't know. So yeah, that's what we're dealing with in this one. I don't want to say any more than that. I already kind of said a lot, but this was just so good. I continue to put this out there. I have people ask me all the time. Every time I bring up this book, they're like, is the spider too much? Because I hate spiders. Y'all, I detest spiders. If I see from the tiniest to the whatever, I will smash it, okay? That is not what this is about, okay? That is not a stumbling block for this book. Because the way that Tiffany and Robert write this couple, the way they write the slow burn of their relationship, this is not a monster banging book where we just jump in and we're banging right away. Like, this is a slow build in the first book, and this book is watching their relationship grow. Now we have a new dynamic because there's other people. There's people that Ivy is more biologically compatible with, who she's meant to be with and make babies with, but Catan has claimed her as his own, so now he's feeling very possessive of her. Will he lose her to one of these humans he's helped wake up? Which, spoiler alert, there isn't other man drama in this book, but these are the complex, like, things they're having to deal with, you know, where he's from a place where if the woman, you know, if he was the strongest man, which he is the strongest of his kind, he can beat the others, and then he's the winner. He would get his mate that way. And that's not necessarily how he's going to win and keep Ivy. And the series is so well done, you guys, okay? It's so well done. It's beautiful. And I really, really hope that if I keep singing the praises of this, more people will give it a go, because it's just, I know the spider freaks people out. I get it. But this isn't the same as so many other monster and alien romance. I mean, there are other good ones. There absolutely are. But I just feel like for having one of the most alien-like heroes, like, who is a thing of that we would fear, that we'd be afraid of, he's one of the best written, and he is so complex, and this relationship is fantastic. So I'm just gonna keep screaming about it forever, okay? I'm gonna do it. All right, so yeah, I actually bumped that one up to a 5-star upon a reread, by the way. Sorry, I should tell you that. I previously had it at a 4-star because there's cliffhangers in this series, and when I was reading them like the day they came out, and then I would have to wait. And so I'm a bit of a bitch when it comes to that. Like, if you keep cliffhanging me, I'm gonna get mad. I didn't know that this series was going to be a trilogy, and now I love that it's a trilogy because of the things I said and because of the way I like that we build it, and also the entire trilogy is out now, so we don't have to wait for it. So I bumped this up to a 5-star. It's a 3 on the spice scale. We definitely have still some more of his wonderful built-in sharabi ropes going on, and some possessive scenes, and some there's an alien blowjob scene in here that is so hot. It's so hot. I love it. I love these two, and their passion is beautiful. Okay, continuing on. Sorry. I love Ivy and Catan. I'll talk about them forever. You can't stop me. All right. Next up is Afterglow by Maria Monroe. I read this book because I just put up a survival romances rec video, which you guys absolutely loved. Thank you so much for supporting that video. When I niche down that far, sometimes those videos don't do well right away. They take a while to do well because people aren't always looking for survival romance or an apocalypse romance. Those are my videos that do well over time. Whereas if I put out a video that is like 5 spicy recs, that video is going to do well right away. I know it. But I love making these oddly specific rec videos, and you guys showing so much enthusiasm and liking and commenting on those videos right away helps keep me excited to make them. So just want to put that out there. I absolutely loved getting to getting to do this one, because it had been over 2 years since I did, like, I call them their forced proximity is like the main trope, and then the oddly specific part is if it's a survival or apocalypse situation. So that's kind of how I do that. That's how I decide if it's oddly specific or not, is it's usually within one kind of main umbrella trope, and then something underneath it is very specific. So anyway, if you were wondering. So Afterglow was an apocalypse romance. There was a virus that wiped out a lot of people, and we have our heroine, Nina, who needs to get to her grandmother's farm. Her grandmother is actually a prepper, so she knows if she can get to her grandma has food, and she has resources, and she has guns, and she has all those things. But Nina is a school teacher living in the city, and she needs to get there. And so she tries to steal a motorcycle from an ex-military man named Creed. And Creed is like, hold up, girl, don't do that. Number one, you shouldn't be sneaking into people's houses trying to steal stuff, because you might get attacked or assaulted by people, because you're a hot little piece and you should be careful. And number two, I won't let you take my bike, but I will give you a ride to your grandma's. And she's like, yeah, that's a great idea. I bet my grandma will give you some stuff in exchange for me safely getting there. And so they're like, cool. So then they begin to travel together. And there we go. I ended up only giving this one 3.5 stars, though I still put it in my rec video for a couple of reasons. I tend to rate some of these lowish, even though I love this trope. Like, I do love this kind of trope. I think that not all authors handle it super well, and so there are a lot of things that are like super convenient, because you don't always want to go super depressing, because it's still a romance, so you know they want to make it light and fluffy. But then there are times where they have sex in really dumb places, and you're like, you are not being a smart survivalist, you are all about that pussy right now, and that is a bad move. And so then I get a little mad at the characters, because I'm like, I want you to get that dick, okay, I want you to, but can we make sure that we don't get attacked by other raiders? But what really won me over was the last, bit. I was enjoying myself. It was good. It was going to be a 3-star read, which again is a good rating for this type of book. I would still recommend it, because when you are binging this type of trope, they're not all going to be a Claire Kent for me. You know, like Claire Kent is my ooh, at the top of this type of trope. But it won me over in the last 30% when we got closer to her family, and we had some other people showing up, and we had them making smarter decisions at certain points. So I did give this a 3.5 star, which I rounded up to a 4 on Goodreads, because I wanted to give it an okay one. And it was a 3 on the spice scale. And then there was some danger of SA at a certain point in this one, because other survivors can be troublesome in these scenarios, right? But overall, and it was also a quick one, so it was 226 pages, and definitely a recommendation for survival stories. All right, next I finished a collection of monstrous short stories by Lily Mayne. There's not a ton to say about this one. It is what it is. There is a short story for pretty much all of the couples. These were short stories and little snippets that she had written and put on her website over the past couple years. So yeah, there was lots of Win and Danny. There was lots of role play scenarios. There was an Eden and Hunter one that just made me so happy. But yeah, there was lots of Charlie and Moth, because that's a favorite, which there's lots of role play and toys being used in that one. And yeah, there was one with Lore and Judd where they're getting a new pet. And then there was a novella at the end that is a kind of spin-off tale where we haven't seen this couple before, and they don't really interact with any of ours, but it's a little spin-off story in there. So this is one that I gave this 5 stars, but it's 5 stars because they were all fun, steamy, sexy time things. There isn't really an overall stuff with this. These are just ramblings and short stories that Lily has written for her fans over the time. And so for me, there was nothing to not like about this, but it's also not, it's not the same type of a 5-star as a really well-told story. It's a 5-star because I love all these characters. And if you love any of her, monstrous characters, there's at least one short in there for you. So, and it was pretty chunky too. A lot of her shorts are almost a novella length as is, because she will just go and she will tell these crazy spicy stories. So I should have given this a 5 on the spice scale, but it's also so ooey gooey sweet that my 5 on the spice usually leans into dark stuff as well. That's what my 5th chili pepper is for, it being very erotic and whatever. And so much of this is so sweet. But there are lots of kinky stuff in here. There's role plays, there's toys, there's edging, there's monster anatomy, there's lots of fun, spicy stuff. So if you love the monstrous books, you will love this. I highly recommend it. It's my favorite type of novella bind up, because there isn't any extra work that's really trying to be done. You just get to have a fun time with people you already love. So yeah, I gave it 5 stars. It's a 4 on the spice scale. Then I read a arc for Sinful Hearts by Jagger. I was so excited to get an arc for this one. Absolutely. I have been loving what I've read from Jagger already. In fact, I finally did download a book from one of his previous series, so I'm going to try that. Although I've said to some of my friends, I don't want to go too far back into Jagger Cole's backlist because I feel like he's writing at the peak level that I want right now. Do you know what I mean? I've shared this about Rena Kent. I don't want to read more of Rena Kent's backstory or backlog. I haven't liked them, but I like what she's putting out now, and I will continue to read those. And that's how I feel about Jagger. But I want to try one of his previous series that has some characters from the series in it. But anyway, okay, Sinful Hearts. So Sinful Hearts is going to be about, is about Hades and Elsa, and Elsa is one of the lawyers that works for the Greek mafia, and so we've seen her in some previous books, and her and Hades have just butted heads because she doesn't fall for any of his charming shit, and him and her will just banter back and forth and just all this stuff. And at the beginning of this book, we start at a sex club, which is where we started the last book, at the same sex club. So it's a little bit like, Jagger, are we going to do this every time? Because one of the things I'm not like a huge fan of is when we just use a sex club for like one scene. I don't know. I wish they had like gone there again to do other things and we like didn't. So then it's like this sex club is only for people to lose their virginity at, apparently, because that's what happened in the previous one too. Well, she was there to kill someone, but she was also like lost her virginity there. And that's what happens at this one. Elsa is being threatened with an arranged marriage from her father, who her father is kind of a secret in this. So she decides, after there's some business that gets done at this club, that she is going to kind of, she's there, she puts on a mask, she's going to join in, and she's going to find someone to lose her virginity to, because then she thinks she will be worthless to her father if she loses her virginity there. And so she sees Hades there, and she knows that he could be the perfect person for her, because she's heard he's really good in bed. She's heard from other people, these just women apparently, and she knows that there won't be any strings attached. So she knows who he is. He apparently doesn't know who she is, even though she just has a mask on, and they go at it all night long. And then the next day she slips out, and he's a little bit like hurt by that, even though he's like, I shouldn't care that the woman left. That's what I usually do to people. But he was a bit more attracted to her than he expected to be. Pretty quickly he finds out that it was her, and he feels kind of betrayed by that, because he has been, and this was well written into the story, he has been tried to be manipulated by women before. One event actually involving an SA, like he was SA'd by a woman. So he doesn't have a problem with women who want to use him for sex, but he has a problem when like women have secrets revolving around it. And so he's a bit untrustful of that in the beginning. But as always, or what I'm coming to discover, I find that Jagger has a really good balance. I find that Jagger has a really good balance between the intense sexual chemistry that these characters have and having really great sex scenes. Like, honestly, they are some of the best I've read in Mafia, where just like the dynamics in them, while still like the consent in them, while still being very sexy, balancing with the plot and with the character development. Like, I feel like he juggles all of those things very well, again, while also being very spicy. Really, the reason this one ended up being a 4.5 and not a 5 for me is that there is a secret the heroine is keeping that our heroine had many, many opportunities to share about. She had many chances to share, and Hades would have helped her immediately. And she lets her fear get in her way in a way that I feel was irrational. Like, I feel like telling him was a safer option than continuing to keep it a secret. However, like, if she would have told him, the way that the third act played out could have still been the same. And it would have irritated me less. And the reason I really point this out, because I read plenty of books where authors have things play out this way, it bothered me because Jagger previously hadn't done that. In the previous 2 books, there were secrets or things being kept, and the heroes figured it out right away. And then, like, we had other problems to deal with. There was other outside things to relationship that was an issue. And so that's something that I previously really liked about him, is that the conflict was external. And so for this internal conflict to be put in a way that also was just frustrating of Elsa to do, it lessened my enjoyment just a little bit. But not enough. So I still gave it a 4.5 star, rounding it up to 5 for my review. This is a 4.5 on the chili pepper scale. His books have so many wonderful kinky stuff in them, okay? Like there's a BDSM dynamic happening like in the sex club, and then there is biting, there's throat necklaces, there's spanking, bondage, backdoor play happening, toys happening. Like these stories are amazing for lots of kinky things. That's why they show up on a lot of my, or will show up on a lot of my like oddly specific rec videos, because boy, is it in there. But the trigger warnings for this is a manipulative parent, attempted SA of the heroine and previous SA of the hero, threats to a child, and characters in danger. So like I said, these books are very brutal, but I feel like he does it well. Like where it fits in there, it would happen. You know, I don't know. I love his books. I'm very much looking forward to Twisted Hearts, which is going to be about Gavin, who's a character we meet in this one. And I was not expecting his, like I was not expecting him to be next, but I'm very intrigued by it. It's gonna be good. So really much liked it. Then it particularly made this next book suffer a bit in its darkness. Okay, so I read Hitched by Biel. This is one that I had seen Cheyenne from That Tall Book Girl recommend. I was very intrigued because it's this woman picks up a hitchhiker and ends up getting carjacked and kidnapped and forced into some things by this man. So we have a felon who's escaped. He's a murderer. He doesn't care much for life. We see him be a serial killer basically in this as well. And our heroine, she is from an abusive marriage, and she stops to pick him up in the rain. And when he hijacks her, her biggest worry is not that he's hijacking her, but her biggest worry is that my husband will kill me if you do this. So we get these signs right away. We also see some worries of when Lex, I don't want to call him the hero, but when the male main character in this, you know, wants to do sexual things to her, he's thinking of forcing her into things, she very much is trying to keep herself covered, and he discovers bruises and just horrible things all over her, and he decides that he will kill her husband for having done this to her. And so, strangely enough, where this book went off the rails for me, because I was actually into it, all right? There is non-con, dub-con. Our heroine is obviously traumatized. She then, like, trauma bonds to this man who treats her badly, but not as bad as her husband has done, you know? And I was into this up until a certain point. And that point was when we kill the husband. Like, I'm dropping it out there. I hope I'll put up a spoiler tag for this. Like, we get to that point where we kill the husband. And for me, this would have been a perfect novella. It absolutely would have been a perfect novella if we'd had everything that happens up until the point where we kill the husband, and then we just see them like Bonnie and Clyding it out. And we just maybe have an epilogue that is, you know, a couple of years later of them in Mexico living and going great, and he had found a job as a mechanic somewhere or something, right? I would have believed it, even though it's bonkers. Like, I would have believed it. It would have been still hot in that like coercive stuff in the beginning, and then it would have been done. Where this one fell apart for me, especially as a true crime lover, you guys know what I talk about, I love true crime stuff, is that we kill this husband and then we make mistake after mistake after mistake, and we have to kill more and more and more people to like cover up what we've done. And our hero, or again, not our hero, our male main character, Lex, is trying to leave the heroine behind and say, claim that you're a battered wife, or claim that like I had stalked you and that I killed him. And she's like, no, 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 I won't. I'm now like, you're mine or whatever. And he tries to do worse and worse things to her to get her to leave. But when you have this type of woman who's already like so traumatic and like bonded to this, she just accepts more and more of the things that he's doing to her. And so, yeah, it ended up in this really twisted place where there are still really hot, spicy scenes to see, but it just kept tumbling more and more off of unbelievability, where, again, I feel like if this had been like a 150-page novella and we'd had him kidnapping her, he's trying to get her to take him to the border, you know, finds out about the husband and is like, I'm going to kill the husband for you, and then it's them riding off into the sunset, I think I would have loved it. I think I would have loved it because it just would have been fascinating. But to actually see their dynamic after that, I don't think it works. My opinion, I don't think it works. I don't think that there's enough story to sustain what they're doing. And watching him try to chase her away over and over again just so we can have these really erotic scenes of him trying to sexually get her scared of him, it was too much for me. But that's just me. So I ended up giving this one a 3-star, and if it had gone on any longer, it would have been lower. However, for it being like a 230-page book, it got a 5 on my spice scale because it had breath play with throat necklaces, spit play, backdoor action, primal play, very rough sex, like chasing, her, like there was so much in here. And then, yeah, the content warnings are for SA, because he definitely is sexually assaulting her in the beginning. Absolutely. She is not willing. Non-con, dubious consent, kidnapping, domestic abuse, death, and cheating, because he is forcing her to cheat on her husband, even though he's a piece of shit. And yeah, so for me, this was just too long and too brutal. It could have been shorter, and we didn't need to see him trying to chase her away. And I think the book works better, my opinion. All right. Then I read Unfurl by Elodie Hart. This one is my Patreon book of the month, so I won't be talking about this here, but we read this for Forbidden Romance. This is a forbidden neighbor, age gap. The hero owns a sex club, and the heroine goes to said sex club to lose her virginity through a program that the sex club offers called Unfurl. So I gave it a 4-star. It was a 4 on the spice scale, and if you'd like to see it, you can check out my Patreon down below. This review will be available this week for them. Then I read an arc of Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I'm so proud of myself getting through these arcs. I've really struggled getting through like Berkeley and Sourcebook arcs, and I feel bad because I keep asking for them because they're popular books, right? So like I want to read them. Like I have FOMO too. I want to read it. And I had an arc for the second book in this series, and it just didn't like work for me that well. I didn't really like Love Hypothesis too much either, but I also didn't dislike any of these, and I've been hearing good things about Love Theoretically so far. So I read this one and I did enjoy it. I gave this one 4 stars. I actually just wrote my review for this one, and the thing I'll say about it is that I think if you are an academic or you've been in academia, that there is a lot to relate to in this book. But this one, and the author even says it, she says it in her author's note, she's like, I went as true to reality and to show the monotony and like the agony of some of these academic interview process and things like that. And for me, that almost had me checking out for the first 40% of this book. And I just kept pushing because I was like, all right, I want to get to at least like some of the stuff happening between this couple to see how I feel about the couple. And that did win me over. I thought Jack was amazing. I didn't think that he was grumpy. I thought actually she was more of the grumpy one. I wouldn't necessarily call him sunshiny, but I don't consider him a grump. I know some people might say, but I don't know. I thought that he was always pretty good natured with her, even though he thinks she's a liar who's lying to his brother about stuff. Because our heroine actually works for this faux, it's called like Faux, and it's a fake dating site, and she's been being his brother's like fake girlfriend for a long time, and he's met her at family functions, and then when she shows up for this academic like interview, he's like, does my brother know that you're a physicist and you do all, because that's not how you were introduced to us as. So he immediately thinks she's a liar, lying to his brother and his family about everything. But he also is very attracted to her, so that leads him to his anger about her, because he's like, I've been jealous of my brother for all this time, and then to find out that you're a liar and you're lying to him makes me dislike you even more. But this one, it's very much like the heroine says she wants to hate him. She says, I hate you all the time. But it's very clear it's more just like dislike to love, because there's not a real reason to hate him besides the fact that he thinks she's a liar, which in his eyes she is, because she's not allowed to reveal that she's fake dating his brother or like what it is. Not only because that'd be like against her contract with it, but also she likes his brother, like they're friends at this point. So anyway, once the romance started to get going and he like asked her out on a date and things start, he was amazing. He was a caregiver. This heroine has type 1 diabetes, and he learns everything he can about it. He makes sure he has like the right snacks for her. He makes sure that she's like drinking juice when she needs to, and like it's so hot. It's so hot. Like I love a competence kink and a caregiving kink, and he completely fulfills that for me. And yeah, once they started dating, it was just so beautiful. And also, when we had kind of like the conflict at the end where some secrets come out and stuff, I was afraid it was going to be this huge blow up. But the thing is, it didn't happen until right at the end, which some people, I know, I've seen some reviews, some people have a problem with because they're like, we've squished everything into the end. But I actually think that it kind of worked, because there's a reveal that happens about the hero where the heroine is like, I need some space to figure something out. Then she has a reveal in her work life about something that's happening. And it makes everything that the hero had been doing kind of like, oh my God, he was right about these things. So we never have like a full breakup, a full disaster. We have like a disagreement in the third act. And so that kind of kept it together for me. And yeah, some beautiful stuff in here. There definitely was more steam in this than the previous two. And the hero was so obsessed with her. Like, it was beautiful. It really was. But I still ended at a 4-star with this one, because if I hadn't been determined to get to the romance part of this, I would have DNF'd it all the way up until 40%, because it was so slow. There was so many emails from her to, or from students to her, and there was so much academic stuff that I didn't want it. But again, if you are in academia and you would understand all that jargon and what's going on, you may love that. So this book isn't badly written. It's just there are large parts of it that aren't for me. But I may still buy this one because this cover was fucking beautiful. Okay, this cover is everything. I love it so much. So I didn't hate this one. It's probably my favorite of the 3 I've read. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. It's a 2.5 on the spice scale. Again, the heroine has type 1 diabetes. She also has a very manipulative family. But the kinky or sexy things are, there's absolute competence kink for how the hero takes care of her and loves her. And the caregiving stuff is fantastic. Love it. Then I ended up, because I was on this road trip, I wanted to read on my TBR for the month. I had, from my Kindle Unlimited video that I made, I had put a few of those books on my June TBR, and one of them was Rein Me In by Kayla Gross, or Gross, I don't know how we say this, I'm going to say Gross. I saw this on Instagram a while ago. I can't remember who I saw reading it, but I'd seen that it was a brother's best friend who, it's a deceased brother, her brother had died, and it was brother's best friend. It was a small town, the heroine's plus size, and she was 5 years older than the hero. Like, I had seen all of those different things. She was also a former barrel racing champion, and she comes back home to help her family after her mother breaks her leg. And she hasn't really been back home since her brother had died like 4 or 5 years ago. And so when she gets back into town, she actually gets off onto the wrong foot with Gavin, who again was her dead brother's best friend, who's 5 years younger than her. And I liked that there was like an older sister, and I liked that he had always had a crush on her, and he wants to ask her out when she's back. But his family is actually going through some traumatic things too. His father had recently died, and so there's him and his younger brother, and then his mom and grandma, and he knows what his family doesn't, that his father got them deeply into debt, and he doesn't think that he can get them out of it. And so he really wants to ask Blake out on a date, but he also is like, I don't have time to date anyone. I'm barely surviving. But there happens to be a charity event happening at a bar that Gavin works at. The family is trying to raise some money to help the Montgomerys, and she ends up getting literally roped into riding the bull and getting auctioned off at a date auction, and she's pretty pissy about this, so it gets her off on the wrong foot with Gavin. And she ends up like going on a date with his friend instead, because his friend wins him in the date instead. So it was a very interesting beginning to this story. I was very interested, but I was also like, what's happening is it never is a love triangle. It never is that. But she does go on a date with someone else first. And definitely that guy's going to be a hero in one of the future books. He definitely will be. He was so sweet. So I really loved this whole town. Like, there's no like bad guy in this. It's the bank is the bad guy. Like, we owe the bank a lot of money type of thing. But him and the heroine end up dating each other, and it's beautiful. Like, I loved this so much. And the thing I put on my Instagram is that the heroine is plus size in here, or, you know, naturally curved, as you could say, but it's never an issue. Her riding the horse isn't an issue. Well, her riding a horse is an issue for a different reason. That's a story reason. But like her, you know, nothing about her is defined by her being plus size. It is just mentioned that she is, and her body is described, like her stretch marks are described. Our hero loves them. There's one where he's like kissing them all, and I just love it. And there's never her like trying to cover herself up when she's naked in front of him. There's just her being like describing that her body is pillowy and soft and him touching it, and we both are having a good time. And it's hard to describe it, but you guys know, even if you're reading a book where the heroine is confident about herself, there's always that scene where she's taking it off and she wants to hide something, and the hero has to like grab her hands and be like, don't cover yourself from me, which is fine. Like, that can be hot. I definitely have read it and been like, oh, I love it. But that never even gets brought up in this one. Like, there's one where he's like, you know, he's like kissing the flab of her tummy, and it's just described as that's what he's doing, and nuzzling her pillowy thighs while he's like going down on her, and it's just described that way. And the heroine doesn't feel embarrassed about herself, and the hero's just totally obsessed with it. And I just loved it. Like, it's literally never brought up besides when her body is described. It's there. It's never her being insecure about it. There's never anyone else making fun of her for it. There's no one that's a fat shamer in this book. She just exists in her body, and her body is described, and everybody's fine with it. And there always has to be a hidden fat phobic person in a book like this. There always has to be a jealous girl who's got to make a comment. And I was watching for it because the hero does have a bitchy ex-girlfriend, and I was like, god damn, if that woman makes a fat phobic comment. Never happens. There is no fat phobic content. There is only love for this beautiful body. And again, I'm only pointing it out because like that's not what this book is about. Like, yes, she's on the cover of this and it gets mentioned, but like if you are sick of like fat like being fetishized in it, or else needing to be like she has to be the most accepting of it, like it has to be spoken all the time, there's none of that. She just is. Her body is plus size and is described as plus size, and that's it. And we have sex and it's great. So anyway, I know I just made a big thing about it, but I know that more plus size heroines are shown in more books lately, and I love that, but I always feel like someone has to have some hate for their body if they are, or they have to be okay, or he's the first hero who's okay with it, and it bugs me. Like, it bugs me. And there's really only 2 books in the last like 6 months I've read where I feel like it was handled right. One of them was Tempt by Melanie Harlow. That one, there's never any issues about it either. And this one. For me, those are the 2 that handle it the best, where the heroine doesn't have crippling insecurities. She might make a comment to herself now and then, but she doesn't have crippling insecurities or trying to cover herself when she's with the person. And the hero is just all for all of it. The more, the better. But it also isn't fetishized where he's like, I loved how much extra I have. No, it's just described that he puts his arm around her and is squeezing her, which I have had done to me and seen others do before. That's how you would describe it. That he was squeezing her pillowy middle. And that's how it's described. So anyway, I just had to go off on that in a positive way. Now, for all the happiness that I said of this, I did give this one 4.5 stars. What kind of like fell off a little bit for me is that the third act conflict does not have to do with them as a couple, which is great. The third act conflict has to do with Gavin's brother and how he reacts to finding out some of Gavin's secrets, and how dramatic that happens, and in kind of a mirrored way as to what happened to Blake's brother. And I don't know how I quite felt about the symmetry of it being so exact. I didn't know how I felt about that, to push her into riding a horse again for the first time in a long time. So that's where I was like, I didn't quite like that, but I loved everything else about this. And the third act conflict, again, wasn't between Gavin and Blake. There's no threat of them breaking up. There's no, oh, our family disapproves somehow. No. And also her parents, oh, I forgot to mention this. Blake's parents reminded me of my parents so much. Not her mom, but her dad. Her dad. She calls her dad daddy, and it isn't weird. Okay? We make things weird. And her mom is mama. And that's what it is. Mama and daddy. Those are her parents. And her parents are both supportive and loving. They want her to handle her grief a little better than she has been. But they are such well-written parents. They're wonderful. Gavin's grandma and mom are great too. I loved all the supporting characters in this. And I'm very excited for Cade's book to see how he shapes up and what he does. And I'm excited also for Jake, I think, is the friend who like takes her on a date. But it's like a friend date. So I really like this, but I couldn't quite give it as high a score as I wanted because there were still other plot things where I was like, eh. But the body positivity in here, without it having to be like, body positivity, was just existed, which is what I want more of. I just want to read more body types and more sexualities and more whatever, where like we're not making a statement by having it. We're just showing all body types. Are people with me? Are you with me? Do you know what I mean? Anyway, whatever. Give it 4.5 stars. It's a 3 on the spice scale. The biggest trigger warning, of course, is the loss of her brother and that death that it happened. And his father's death too, but mostly the brother is the one that's hard. All right. And then the last book that I finished this week, I also finished in the truck yesterday because I just kind of threw this one in my backpack at the last minute since I knew we were going to Montana. And I had started the Redemption Ranch series by Lena Hendricks. So I brought book 2 with me, which is The Alias. The lines between fact and fiction begin to blur. And this one is a fake marriage, but also marriage of convenience. Like they do get married because Parker, who is the brother of the hero from The Badge, he has arrived at the ranch with this woman in tow who he saved her. There was an incident at her restaurant she owned with her uncle, or her uncle owns. Her uncle was killed. She saw stuff she shouldn't see, and so he takes her on the run with him, and he has heard through the grapevine that his brother ended up at Redemption Ranch, which is supposed to be a safe space. And he had already kind of been a bit of a narc for a certain police officer. And so when he hears where his brother has been at, he decides to give it a try as well. And our heroine gets it in her head that, oh, well, I can't testify against you if we're married. And he just goes along with that. So they end up getting married when they get to Montana and then going to this ranch and staying there and being married. And it's supposed to be a fake marriage. And he's planning that as soon as it's safe for her, he will send her on her way and make sure that she has a happy life. But the more and more time they spend together, the more that our heroine, Sienna, is like, I don't want to leave. Like, I want to be with you and you want to be with me. Why are we doing this? So I really enjoyed that. And I also really enjoyed about this one, again, I'm going to talk about third act conflict, that the hero does try to push her away. Like the thing that you see from the beginning, because you see him thinking these things that like, I never claimed to be a good man. I'm going to have to send her away. Like, we know that's in his head. But when it comes to the point where he actually tries to push her away, things don't go like he planned it. And there is a different third act conflict to happen. There's something else to happen that has enough of the plot stuff going on that it is a conflict that doesn't involve a huge separation. Where my problem with The Badge, even though I understood why, is there's a separation for a few months between the characters, which is actually when this book is taking place, because the events at the end of The Badge is when like Parker actually shows up, and then Val is gone for a few months, and like this is the time that Parker and Sienna are there. So we don't see Val all the time, but we get to know Evan and Gemma. Like Parker gets to re-know them, and I thought that was really cool. So I loved this book. I really, really did. I love the stuff on the farm. Maybe it was some of the atmosphere for me driving through the Montana plains and the high plains while I was reading it. But again, I really liked it. I like how the third act conflict played out, and so this one got a 5-star for me. This one was a marriage of convenience, fake relationship, forced proximity because they need to live in a cabin and like there's only one bed. It's the small town of Tip, Montana, and forced proximity on the ranch. And then definitely Grumpy Sunshine. He is definitely a grump. And I love it because Lena dedicated this book to her husband. Well, no, this one says for all of us who love a grump. And then in her acknowledgments, she says, to my grump of a husband, thank you for letting me be your ray of sunshine and annoying the shit out of you. A secret part of me is glad I'm the only one who sees under your tender heart. I promise to always keep it safe. I love that. And having met her and her husband, he definitely is a grump, and she is just over the top. It's amazing. So I gave this one 5 stars. It was a 3 on the spice scale. And there were some toys used at one point, which was really good. I have not seen this done outside of B&M, but there actually was DP in 1V with a toy and the hero, which I have not seen outside of like a spicy BDSM before, but we did it in here. And I was like, whoa, we're doing it right now. So just want to put that out there. There is DP in a V with a pink dildo and the hero. So there you go. But yeah, I gave this 5 stars as a 3 on the spice scale, and there is a trigger warning for the death of a loved one in here. So there you are. Those are the 11 books that I read and DNF'd in week 23 of 2023. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you would like to support the channel in some way, check out my links down below for my Patreon or for channel memberships. Those are awesome. Every little bit helps. It takes my whole village of supporters to keep it going here. But thank you so much for watching, friends. Oh, and also remember, there are links to all the books that I talked about down below. I do have affiliate links with Amazon if you choose to buy any books that I have talked about today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.